Colorado Territory, 1872. The unforgiving sun beat down upon the dusty trail that snaked through the rugged Rocky Mountain foothills. In this harsh and beautiful land, 25-year-old Adam Pierce had convinced himself of one simple truth. A cowboy had no business dreaming of anything beyond the next herd, the next dollar, or the next town. Love was a luxury for those with soft hands and safer lives, not for men who rode the dangerous edge of civilization. "Keep moving," Adam called to the cattle, his voice carrying across the open range as he guided his chestnut mare alongside the lumbering herd. His broad-brimmed hat shaded eyes that had seen too much death for a man so young. 3 years riding with the goodnight-loving outfit had hardened him in ways that went beyond his suntanned skin and lean, muscular frame. The war had taken his father, the fever his mother, and the frontier had claimed his only brother last spring, an Apache arrow that came without warning while they watered the horses. Since then, Adam had kept to himself, speaking only when necessary to the other drovers. Better to remain alone than to forge bonds that would inevitably be severed by the cruelty of this untamed land. "Storm coming," remarked Josiah, the trail boss, pointing toward the darkening western sky. "We need to find shelter before nightfall or risk losing half the herd to panic." Adam nodded, scanning the horizon until his eyes settled on a thin column of smoke rising from a small valley ahead. "There's someone down there. Might be a homestead. Ride ahead and see," Josiah ordered. "Ask if we can use their land to wait out the storm. Offer fair payment." With a nod, Adam spurred his mare forward, leaving the dust and lowing of the cattle behind. As he crested the hill, he saw a modest cabin nestled against the protective embrace of a rocky outcropping. A small garden patch, a chicken coop, and a sturdy barn spoke of careful planning and hard work. Someone had carved out a life here, against all odds. He approached cautiously, one hand resting near his Colt. The frontier had taught him that caution preceded survival. When he was 50 yards out, the cabin door opened, and a woman stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand but pointed downward. "That's far enough, sir," she called, her voice clear and steady as a mountain stream. Adam reined his horse to a stop, raising his hands slightly to show he meant no harm. "Ma'am, I'm riding with the goodnight-loving outfit. We've got 500 head of cattle and a storm on our tail. I've come to ask if we might use your valley to wait it out. We'll pay fair." The woman studied him for a long moment. She was young, no more than 22 by his estimation, with honey blonde hair pulled back beneath a faded blue bonnet. Her dress, though simple and patched in places, was clean and well kept. What struck Adam most, however, was the determined set of her jaw and the wary intelligence in her eyes. This was no fragile Eastern flower, but a woman who knew the price of frontier survival. 500 head will tear up my grass something fierce," she replied, lowering the rifle slightly. "But I suppose that's better than having a stampede through my property. You and your men can use the western pasture beyond the creek." Adam removed his hat, nodding his thanks. "Much obliged, ma'am. The name's Adam Pierce." "Abigail Zimmerman," she replied, her expression softening slightly. "Though most just called me Abby before." She trailed off, her eyes flickering to a small wooden cross visible on a gentle rise behind the cabin. The approaching rumble of thunder broke the moment. "You'd best hurry back to your herd, Mr. Pierce," she said. "That storm won't wait on pleasantries." Within the hour, the cattle were safely contained in the western pasture, and the drovers had made camp along the creek. The storm hit with fury, but the valley offered protection from the worst of the winds. As rain pounded the canvas of hastily erected shelters, Josiah approached Adam. "Miss Zimmerman has invited 2 of us to supper," he said, "as thanks for the coin we paid. I figure you and I should go, show our appreciation properly." Adam wanted to refuse. The less he interacted with the young widow, the better. Something about her clear eyes and the quiet dignity with which she carried her grief unsettled him. But refusing would be an insult, so he nodded reluctantly. The cabin interior was warm and smelled of fresh bread and stewing meat. A fire crackled in the hearth, pushing back the chill brought by the storm. The furnishings were sparse but well-crafted: a table, for chairs, a rocking chair near the fire, and a bed tucked behind a homespun curtain. "Please, sit," Abigail said, gesturing to the table. As she turned to tend to the pot hanging over the fire, Adam noticed a small portrait on the mantel, a man in Union blue, his face serious but kind. "My husband, Thomas," she said, catching his glance. "Lost at Gettysburg." She stirred the pot with practiced movements. "For years now." The simple statement held volumes of unspoken pain. 4 years alone in this wilderness, carving out a life from unforgiving earth. Adam felt a grudging respect blooming. "This is mighty fine food, Miss Zimmerman," Josiah said as they ate. "Best I've had in months of trail cooking." She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face, revealing dimples in her cheeks and a warmth in her eyes that Adam found himself unable to look away from. "I may be a widow of 22, but I still remember how to set a proper table," she said. "My mother would haunt me if I forgot her lessons." As the meal progressed, Josiah mentioned they'd be moving the herd toward Denver within 2 days. "We're short-handed," he added, glancing at Adam. "Lost 2 men to typhoid back in Texas." "I could help with your cattle," Abigail offered suddenly. "I need the money, and I know how to handle stock. My father ran cattle before the war." Adam couldn't help his skeptical expression. "It's dangerous work, ma'am. Not suitable for a woman," she finished, her eyes flashing. "I've defended this homestead against wolves, rustlers, and 2 harsh winters alone. I can certainly help move your cattle a few days' ride to Denver." "I am too old, sir, but I can cook," she added with a hint of irony, gesturing to the empty plates before them. "And ride, and shoot, and mend. What more do you need on a cattle drive?" Before Adam could respond, Josiah laughed heartily. "She's got you there, Pierce. And we do need the help." He turned to Abigail. "We'd be grateful for your assistance, Miss Zimmerman, paid same as any drover. But I'll need someone to look after you, and Pierce here is my most reliable man." The arrangement was settled before Adam could voice his objections. 2 days later, with the storm cleared and the cattle rested, they set out for Denver. Abigail had secured her cabin, loaded a small pack on a sturdy pinto mare, and joined the drive wearing split riding skirts and a determined expression. Adam kept his distance initially, speaking to her only when necessary. But as the days passed, he couldn't help but notice her competence. She rode as if born to the saddle, worked tirelessly, and even the most skeptical drovers gradually accepted her presence. On the 3rd night, Adam found himself taking the same watch as Abigail. The cattle were settled, the night clear with a canopy of stars stretching across the vast Colorado sky. They rode the perimeter in silence until she finally spoke. "You don't approve of me being here." It wasn't a question, and Adam saw no point in pretending. "It's not about approval, ma'am. The trail is dangerous. Men die out here." "People die everywhere, Mr. Pierce," she replied quietly. "My husband died thousands of miles away fighting for a cause he believed in. My parents died in their own home of fever. At least out here, under this sky, I feel free." Her words struck something in him. He'd spent so long seeing the frontier as an adversary to be survived rather than a place where one might find freedom. "Why did you stay?" he asked. "After your husband. Many would have returned east." Abigail was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. "The land was ours," she finally said. "Our dream. Thomas is buried there, and someday I will be too. But until then," she looked up at the stars. "Until then, I mean to live, Mr. Pierce. Not just survive." The distinction haunted Adam through the night and into the following days. He had been surviving, not living, since losing his brother. Each day a grim exercise in endurance rather than an opportunity for something more. As they approached a narrow canyon that would shorten their journey by a full day, Josiah grew concerned about recent reports of bandits in the area. "We'll split into 2 groups," he decided. "Main herd will go the long way round. Pierce, you take Zimmerman and a small group through the canyon as a test. If it's clear, signal us to follow." Adam didn't like it, but orders were orders. He, Abigail, and 2 other drovers separated 20 head and headed toward the canyon entrance. The attack came swiftly, 6 men emerging from the rocks, guns drawn. "Drop your weapons, and we'll let you live," called their leader, a scarred man with cold eyes. "Resist, and we'll leave your bodies for the buzzards." The 2 drovers immediately raised their hands, but Adam tensed, calculating the odds. Beside him, Abigail's hand moved slowly toward the rifle in her saddle holster. "Don't," he murmured. "They'll kill you." Her eyes met his, fierce and unafraid. Better to die fighting than live broken, she whispered, and in that moment, something shifted in Adam's chest, a recognition of a spirit as untamed as his own. What happened next unfolded in heartbeats. Abigail suddenly spurred her mare forward, creating a distraction as Adam drew and fired in one fluid motion. The leader fell. The other bandits, momentarily confused, provided just enough time for the drovers to take cover behind the rocks. The ensuing firefight was brief but intense. When it ended, 2 bandits lay dead, 3 had fled, and Adam nursed a graze along his ribs where a bullet had come too close. Abigail, remarkably, was unharmed, though her hands shook as she helped bind his wound. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen," he said through gritted teeth as she tightened the bandage. "Perhaps both," she replied, her voice steadier than her hands. "My husband always said I had more courage than sense." She paused, her eyes meeting his. "But you followed my lead without hesitation." "What?" Adam had no answer that made sense, even to himself. He had acted on instinct, trusting her in a way he hadn't trusted anyone since his brother died. They rejoined the main herd, taking the longer route. That night, as the drovers celebrated their narrow escape with extra rations of coffee and whiskey, Adam found himself seated beside Abigail at the campfire. The light danced across her features, softening them, highlighting the gold in her honey-blonde hair. "You saved my life today," he said quietly. "We saved each other," she corrected. "That's how it works out here, isn't it? No one survives alone." Her words struck him like a physical blow. How long had he been trying to do exactly that? Survive alone, needing no one, offering nothing of himself to others? "My brother died because I wasn't watching carefully enough," he confessed suddenly, the words escaping before he could stop them. "We were watering the horses. I was distracted, thinking about a girl back in San Antonio. If I'd been paying attention, you'd have died alongside him," she finished gently. "Or perhaps you both would have lived. There's no way to know, Adam." It was the first time she'd used his given name, and somehow that made her words sink deeper. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you keep going after losing so much?" Abigail stared into the fire. "One breath at a time. One day at a time. And I remember that Thomas wouldn't want me to stop living because he did." As they neared Denver, Adam found himself seeking out Abigail's company. They rode together during the day, sharing stories of their lives before the frontier had shaped them. He learned she was the daughter of a Virginia cattle rancher, educated at a ladies' seminary until the war came. She'd married Thomas at 18, full of dreams about their future in the West. In turn, he told her about growing up in Tennessee, losing his parents, and following the cattle trails with his brother. He spoke of stars and open plains, of stampedes and quiet nights, of the strange freedom found in having no permanent home. "But don't you want roots someday?" she asked as Denver's distant lights came into view on their final evening. "A place that's yours?" The question stirred something in him, a longing he'd buried so deeply he'd almost forgotten it existed. Before he could answer, Josiah approached with news that changed everything. "Telegraph came through," the trail boss said grimly. "There's trouble waiting in Denver. Seems our buyer has been arrested for fraud. No payment waiting for us." The men erupted in angry shouts. Without payment, there would be no wages, months of dangerous work for nothing. "We have options," Josiah continued when the noise died down. "We can sell for less to another buyer, or we can drive the herd to Cheyenne. 2 more weeks, but better prices." The vote was split, with half the men unwilling to risk more weeks without pay. By morning, the outfit had fractured. Josiah would take half the men and cattle to Cheyenne. The rest would sell cheap in Denver and go their separate ways. "What will you do?" Abigail asked Adam as they watched the preparations. He hesitated. For the first time in years, the endless trail ahead didn't call to him. Instead, he found himself thinking of a small cabin nestled against rocks, of land that could be worked and made to flourish. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "What about you? Back to your homestead?" She nodded, but her eyes revealed uncertainty. "It'll be harder going back alone, knowing what I'm returning to." The silence. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Adam knew that silence well, had wrapped himself in it like armor. But now, the thought of returning to it seemed unbearable. Before he could speak, a commotion erupted near the remuda. One of the drovers, Jenkins, a man known for his temper, had returned drunk from Denver. He was shouting, waving a bottle, accusing Josiah of cheating the men. You and that woman, Jenkins slurred, pointing at Abigail. Planning to take the herd for yourselves. Adam stepped forward, placing himself between Jenkins and Abigail. That's enough. Sleep it off. Jenkins drew his pistol with surprising speed. Don't tell me what to do, Pierce. You've been moon-eyed over that widow since she joined up. Time slowed. Adam saw Jenkins' finger tighten on the trigger. He reached for his own weapon, knowing he'd be too late. A shot cracked through the air. Jenkins staggered, dropping his gun as blood bloomed on his shoulder. Behind Adam, Abigail stood with a small derringer, smoke still curling from its barrel. Next one goes somewhere more permanent, she said, her voice steady despite the paleness of her face. The incident solidified Adam's decision. As Jenkins was taken to the doctor in Denver, he approached Josiah. I'm not going to Cheyenne, he said. I'd like my wages for what we've done so far. The trail boss studied him knowingly. Planning to escort Miss Zimmerman home? Something like that, Adam admitted. Good, Josiah replied, surprising him. About time you stopped running, son. The journey back to Abigail's homestead took 6 days. They traveled slowly, in no particular hurry, each aware that something fragile and important was growing between them. On the final night, camped within sight of her valley, Adam finally found the courage to speak what was in his heart. I don't want to leave you here alone, he said as they sat beside the fire. These past weeks, they've changed me, Abby. You've changed me. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the flames. What are you saying, Adam? I'm saying I've been a fool. Thinking that caring for someone makes you weak, that being alone makes you strong. He took her hand, marveling at how small it felt in his own. I'm saying I'd like to stay, if you'll have me. Abigail's expression grew serious. My land comes with a grave, Adam. Thomas will always be part of it. I wouldn't want it any other way, he replied honestly. He loved you. He helped make you the woman you are, the woman I'm falling in love with. Her eyes widened at the declaration. You hardly know me. I know enough, he said. I know you're brave and stubborn and kind. I know you can cook a meal that makes men weep. That earned him a smile. And I know I want to learn the rest, day by day, if you'll give me the chance. Abigail was quiet for a long moment. I never expected to feel this way again, she finally whispered. It frightens me how much I've come to care for you. Adam understood that fear all too well. We've both lost so much, he said. Maybe that's why we recognize what we've found. When they reached her cabin the next day, it stood as they had left it, though weeds had begun to encroach on the garden. Adam watched as Abigail moved through the rooms, touching familiar objects, reclaiming her space. It feels different, she observed. Coming back with someone beside me. Good different, he asked, suddenly uncertain. She turned to him, sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating her face. At 22, she had already endured more than most twice her age, yet there was no bitterness in her expression, only hope. Yes, she said simply. Good different. That evening, after they had tended to the animals and cleared the garden of weeds, Abigail prepared a meal at her own hearth for the first time in weeks. Adam watched her move confidently through the familiar tasks, struck by how right it felt to be here. I meant what I said last night, he told her as they ate. I want to stay. Build something here with you. She met his gaze steadily. And I meant it when I said this land comes with memories. If you stay, you need to understand that. I do, he assured her. I'm not asking you to forget, Abby. Just to make room for new memories alongside the old ones. After supper, they walked together to the small grave on the rise behind the cabin. The wooden cross bore Thomas Zimmerman's name, dates, and the simple epitaph, beloved husband, brave soldier. Abigail knelt, clearing away the few weeds that had sprung up in her absence. I talk to him sometimes, she admitted. Tell him about the day, the crops, the weather. It sounds foolish, I suppose. Not foolish, Adam said gently. Loyal. She looked up at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. You're a good man, Adam Pierce. Thomas would have liked you. They stood together as the sun set over the Rocky Mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. In that moment, Adam understood that the frontier wasn't simply a place to survive. It was a place where life, with all its joy and pain, could be fully embraced. As autumn turned to winter, Adam and Abigail worked side by side to prepare the homestead. He repaired the barn, reinforced the cabin walls against the coming cold, and hunted to fill the smokehouse. She tended the garden's last harvest, preserved foods, and sewed warm quilts for the bed they now shared as husband and wife, married by a traveling preacher who'd stopped for a night's lodging in October. Their wedding had been simple but joyful, attended by Josiah and a few drovers who detoured from a cattle drive to witness the ceremony. Abigail had worn her best dress, blue calico with lace at the collar, and Adam had polished his boots till they shone. They'd exchanged vows beneath the cottonwood tree beside the creek, promises of love and loyalty that neither made lightly. The first heavy snow came in late November, blanketing the valley in pristine white. Trapped indoors by the weather, they spent evenings by the fire, Adam carving wooden figures while Abigail read aloud from her small collection of books. In those quiet moments, he marveled at how completely his life had transformed in just a few months. "What are you thinking?" she asked one night, catching his thoughtful expression. "About how wrong I was," he answered honestly. "I thought the only way to survive out here was to stay hard, stay alone. Never let yourself need anyone." She set aside her book, moving to sit beside him on the bearskin rug before the fire. "And now," Adam pulled her close, breathing in the lavender scent of her hair. "Now I know that surviving isn't enough. It's in loving someone, in building something together, that we truly live." Spring brought new life to the valley. The garden flourished under Abigail's care, and the small herd of cattle Adam had purchased with his savings grazed contentedly on the western pasture. Together they built a second room onto the cabin, planning for the future with hopeful hearts. When summer came again, bringing with it the anniversary of their first meeting, Abigail shared news that completed their joy. By winter, their family would grow by one, a child conceived in love, to be raised in the home they had built together. As they stood on the porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the Rocky Mountains in gold, Adam felt a profound sense of peace. The frontier had not been tamed. It remained as wild and dangerous as ever, but within it, they had carved out a place of belonging. "Do you ever miss the trail?" Abigail asked, her head resting against his shoulder, her hand cradling the slight swell of her belly. Adam considered the question, remembering the endless horizons, the freedom of movement, the simplicity of driving cattle from one place to another. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but then I remember what I found instead." She turned in his embrace to face him, her honey-blonde hair catching the last rays of sunlight. At 23, Abigail Pierce carried herself with the quiet strength that had first captured his heart. "And what was that?" "A home," he said simply, placing his hand over hers. "Not just a place, but a feeling. Belonging. Purpose." He bent to kiss her softly. "Love." As darkness fell over their valley, stars emerging one by one in the vast Colorado sky, Adam realized that his greatest journey had not been across the plains or through mountain passes, but from isolation to connection. The frontier had taught him how to survive, but Abigail had shown him how to live. And in the years to come, through harsh winters and bountiful harvests, through the birth of their children and the growth of their ranch, through all the joys and sorrows that life on the frontier would bring, they would face it as they had faced everything since that stormy day when fate had brought them together, side by side, hand in hand, their love a shelter stronger than any cabin walls.